Hello, everybody. Hello, Patrick. There you are.
Hello.
Welcome, everybody, to this month's The History of Fresh Produce live stream. If people just understood, Patrick, how much effort we put into trying to get this stuff on time. People don't see what happens in the background, but it's literally panic until the last second.
Listen, even like we had a live stream before this, and it was like the power cut out, the internet jets like coming in and out of the studio, like hey. Like I told him, I was like, relax. We'll get this. And I'm sitting here like, what is going on? Right. But there's a lot. Like people think this is like, I say this all the time, like easy. Like it is easy. It's easy when it's fun, right? But I'll tell you this, like this is a lot of work to get to do this. Like seriously.
It is. But we've made it. Well, we're maybe 2 minutes behind. So not too bad.
Yeah.
But it's been a while. It's been a while since we did a live stream, right? Because you and I took a bit of a break last month for holidays, right?
And then we were together for the one previously when we were in New York together. But we kind of just
then we went on holiday.
Right?
August. Yeah. August, we're on vacation.
Yep.
We're back now. We're back now. And I was going to say next month, but it's really, 3 weeks until the big industry show in Anaheim.
Yeah.
In the middle of October. And we are both going to be there. Obviously for business, but we are also going to have a very special, we hope it's going to be a live stream. We don't know what the setup is going to be at this location yet. If it's not live, it'll be
pre-recorded.
It'll be pre-recorded live and aired out. So we're going to be going to, I guess we can tell the listeners where we're going to be going. We're going to be going to a farm, a Japanese American farm, located really like in the heart of Anaheim. I don't know how it's possible. This farm that's basically like in the midst of the city, but
yeah,
it's there and it has a history, and it's obviously going to be focusing on the story about Japanese Americans and their story as immigrant farmers back in the first half of the 20th century. So it's going to be, I think it's going to be a lot of fun. It's going to be different. And actually, for any parents out there who have their kids listening to Blippi went to this farm twice, I believe. So
which Blippi? The original Blippi or the new Blippi?
I think it's the original Blippi.
So not too many people follow the original Blippi anymore. If you haven't heard the controvery, which we're not going to talk about.
Okay, well, that is not the kind of history we talk about
controversy.
Here. Okay.
And it might involve fecal matter being put on a car by somebody, but I'm not going to get into it.
We will not be there with Blippi, but he has.
We're not affiliated with him. Hopefully that made Jet smile just now.
So that's something to look forward to for next month. But regular listeners will, I hope, have been paying attention and listening to the last few episodes, that they'll know that we're currently in the midst of our epic series now on the history of apples.
Yeah.
And so we figured we'd keep this month's live stream kind of in the world of apples and explore the names behind some of the world's most famous apples. Okay. And honestly, there are just an insane amount of apple varieties out there. I mean, I would almost argue more than any other fruit or vegetable out there. Wouldn't you say so?
100%.
I mean,
100%.
How many other...
It dominates the retail shelf. You all see it if you're, everybody's a consumer, right? You see it out there, right? You see it when you walk into a grocery store. The apple, there's apples.
Yeah, it's I can't think of another produce item that has that many different names that you can recognize, as a consumer.
You can recognize,
It's kind of crazy. And we'll touch, I guess, a little bit on that. I don't know if it's in this episode or in our regular lineup, but anyway. But yeah, I mean, if you think about it, we talk about Granny Smith, Red Delicious, Golden Delicious, maybe a more obscure one, Cox's Orange Pippin. I mean, the story behind these names, there's stories of hardship and resilience, chance discoveries, deliberate cultivation, even social upheaval and empires in decline. And of course, behind every apple, Patrick, there's always a human story, right? And so what is there? Or I guess where better to begin than with the most iconic apple of them all, at least to some, which would be the Granny Smith.
Yeah, old Granny Smith.
Old Granny Smith.
Right? The old granny, right? And we made that a question that we were like, hey, is there really a granny behind it? And I love it. I always picture this like slightly severe, like Victorian grandmother. Okay. When I hear the name. Oh, how we doing there, Granny?
Yeah.
Granny Smith.
Yeah,
Okay. But actually, Granny Smith was a real person, wasn't she?
she was. She was actually. And so let's tell her story because it's an interesting story.
It
So
is.
it begins not in Australia, where the apple would become famous eventually, but in rural Sussex, England, in the parish of Peasmarsh. I don't know another more British village name than Peasmarsh, but that's where she was from. And this is where Maria Ann Sherwood was born at the very end of the 18th century. Now, Maria's life was hard. Her father was an agricultural laborer. Maria herself went into farm service, specifically on fruit farms. By the age of 19, she was married to Thomas Smith, another farm laborer, and the two of them settled in the neighboring parish of Beckley. And Beckley was not exactly a prosperous place either. In fact, it was described as one of the most impoverished parishes in Sussex. So Maria here is being dealt a tough hand so far. But why was this so impoverished? What's going on here? So, little context. So, the Napoleonic Wars had just ended. There was a labor surplus, not to mention, the industrial revolution is starting to kick off. So you have machines that are starting to replace men in the fields. And so naturally, wages are starting to fall through the floor. And as we've seen many times in history, especially on this show, when you have hungry and desperate people, that usually leads to problems. And it was no different in this case. So agricultural laborers across Kent and Sussex erupted in protest in 1830, what became known as the Spring Riots. And Beckley, where the Smiths were living now, was right in the eye of this storm.
I love I love that. And it gives you just a true, I would say a true overview, John. And so you got the grinding poverty, and I was going to jump in too and say that to you and go, of course, right? Of course, like riots breaking out, and then
Yeah.
and if you were lucky, you might have had a chance to escape, right, John? Like,
Oh yeah. Well,
like let's be real here, okay?
well, I think that's the point part about escape because that's the authorities had hit on what they saw as a solution, and that was export the problem, get rid
Right.
of these people that are upset and angry. Basically these hangry people, right? We talked about this during our French Revolution episode. A lot of hangry people that
A lot of
contributed to this.
hangry.
So by the late 1830s, government agents were, you can kind of just picture this, government agents just roaming across the British countryside, recruiting families,
Mhm.
hangry families with
Mhm.
agricultural skills for a new life overseas, selling this picture of life can be so much better if you just get out of here and
Life
go over
on the
there.
other side.
Exactly.
Right?
The
It's
grass
always
is always greener.
greener. Yeah.
Exactly. So
Maybe in Dutchland, but not
listen,
here.
in the Netherlands, the grass is always greener.
It's always greener, baby.
But so anyway, the Smiths, Maria, Thomas, their 5 children, were among those that were offered a place. And so in 1838, they boarded the Lady Nugent, which you people watching live on YouTube can see a kind of a etching of this ship. They boarded this ship with nearly 250 other immigrants and sailed for New South Wales, Australia. And so after
Wow.
128 days at sea, that's almost half a year at sea, they
They say
arrived.
it like that on purpose.
Yeah.
Only 128 days. Like, yeah,
I mean,
okay.
back then, people expect it, but for us, that's
No,
crazy.
listen, if someone told me 5 days on a cruise, I get nervous.
Yeah, exactly. There you go.
128 days? No. Oh my God. Go on.
But look, they arrived. They arrived at Sydney, and when they arrived, Thomas quickly found work in the orchards of Ryde, which was today is actually a suburb of the city of Sydney. And over the years, they managed to slowly buy up land, clear that land, and establish their own orchard. And so finally, it was here among the oranges and peaches and apricots and pears, something remarkable happened because around 1868. Maria noticed a new apple tree sprouting by the creek near their land,
Okay.
and its fruit was unlike anything they'd ever seen before. It was large, it was crisp, tart, yet refreshing. And so legend has it that it grew from the core of some crab apples Maria had tossed out her kitchen window, and the seeds cross-pollinated with a nearby orchard tree.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay. So this just wasn't just an accident. A lucky throw of the apple peelings, John.
Yes and no, I would say, because yeah, I mean, the accident produced the seedling, of course. Okay, we're not going to
Right.
argue that. But I would argue that it was Maria's sharp eye and experience that made this difference, because this could have easily been, not noticed, right? Most people never see their seedlings survive to fruit, right? Think about how many times your kid comes home with a seedling. Very rarely does it sprout up. But Maria saw potential in this
Yeah, it's true.
seedling, right? And so when she saw that potential, she ended up nurturing it, propagating it, and then eventually sharing it. And so by the
Mm.
time she died in 1870, locals were already calling it Granny Smith's seedling. And you can actually, again, people watching could see kind of, I guess, an
Look at
early.
old extra fancy granny.
Yeah, I kind of like that, don't you?
Look at old extra
They-
looking like the granny in, the Little Red Riding Hood.
oh, I was gonna say
Like,
Mrs. Doubtfire a little bit there.
oh, yeah, listen, I'm thinking like, like folk tale and like
Oh,
we're
okay,
back in
fair.
the days. You're thinking like pop
Listen,
culture.
they don't make
Okay.
brands like they used to, okay?
Oh gosh, no. No, 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 no. This lady looks like she will make you go get your own switch off a
Yeah,
lemon tree.
yes, she
Okay.
will. Yes, she
Like
will.
I'm
Listen, Maria's lived a tough life, okay? She don't
okay.
mess around. But anyway, back to Granny. So within decades,
I love Granny.
this apple was winning prizes at agriculture shows, and by the 1890s, the
Back it up.
new the New South Wales Department of Agriculture had selected it as a prime candidate for export. And it makes sense because its thick, waxy skin made it
Yeah.
perfect for long voyages. And soon it was being shipped just all across the world. And so today, Granny Smith apples are grown on every continent. They're celebrated in Eastwood's annual Granny Smith Festival in Australia.
Okay.
And it's eaten in everything from pies to lunch boxes. But at its heart, right, at the heart of this apple, it's a story of this poor farm girl from Sussex who really, through grit, chance, and a little horticultural genius, gave the world one of its most enduring apples.
All right.
That's
And it
beautiful.
should, right?
Yeah.
I think that it's a great story.
Yeah.
Though I have to say, not all apple names come from such a warm, homely origin. Okay.
No, of course not.
Some are a little less wholesome, John. Okay. Which brings us, I would say, neatly onto perhaps the most notorious apple of them all, the
Which
red
ones?
delicious.
Ooh, everyone shivers when they hear Red
I
Delicious.
hate red delicious. Listen, if you're watching, does
Every
that even look like a red delicious to you?
I mean, it looks beautiful.
It looks
It looks amazing.
amazing.
Yeah.
Like, but one, a red delicious is the color, but is a more darker. It should have a warning label on it that says, could choke on peel. Like it might be tasting like water. Like I'm being very rude, right? But no, it's crazy, right? The red delicious is a staple item still to this day. And now if you ever had one from a supermarket in the 90s, you may already be groaning. Seriously.
Yeah.
I said it. The thick skin, the mealy texture, not much taste at all.
No.
Listen, I said that before even like looking at our notes, right? But once upon a time, believe it or not, the red delicious actually was delicious, John.
Yeah. Well, it had to be. I would hope. I would hope so, right?
I mean, the story begins way back when, 1870s in Iowa, with a farmer named Jesse Hyatt, and he was tending
There he
his
is.
orchards
Look at that.
when a rogue little seedling sprouted where it wasn't supposed to be. How about that?
Yeah.
This guy looks like my uncle. Okay, now Hyatt chopped it down, it grew back. He chopped it down again, and then again it grew back. See, he didn't know how to deroot a tree.
I was gonna say,
that-
come on, Hyatt. What are you doing?
Okay,
Listen,
like
he's got a great beard, though.
it's derooting. Okay, and now eventually Hyatt gave up and let the stubborn tree be. And wouldn't you know it, that tree produced an apple unlike anything else in his orchard. Stripped red, yellow, sweet, juicy, and full of flavor. Now, Hyatt named it the Hawkeye after his home state of Iowa, John.
Oh, okay. Let me stop you there for a second, Patrick, because first of all, that's a great name, Hawkeye.
100%.
All right.
Oh my God.
What the hell happened with that name? Secondly, let me get this straight. So this apple that would go on to dominate American grocery stores for like decades was essentially a weed, right? I mean,
Technically, yes.
either or, he just didn't know how to cut down a tree correctly.
He just didn't know how to cut a tree down.
Yeah.
This guy, I like him already, though.
Yeah.
You got to
Jesse
admit.
Hyatt.
Listen, John, an apple weed with with very good manners, I would say, right?
Okay.
So
that's fine.
at first, Hyatt couldn't get anyone to take it seriously. The apple trade in the late 19th century was still obsessed with the Ben Davis apple.
Davis.
And we'll show that on screen as well, which was known as the mortgage lifter because it was so reliable to go. Trouble was, it looked better than it tasted.
So why not keep that name for an apple? Mortgage lifter.
What does it do?
Like,
Helps
it's so
pay
much
your
better
bill.
than Ben Davis. I'm just saying.
I agree. I mean,
Got Hawkeye, got mortgage lifter. I mean, these are great names.
These are great labels that could come out of it too, right? In the 1890s, John, the Stark Brothers Nursery in Missouri held a contest to find a worthy replacement for the Ben Davis. Hyatt, by now in his 70s, sent off some of his Hawkeye apples. Legend has it that when the head of Stark Brothers bit into one, he claimed, that's delicious.
Of course he said that. That definitely happened.
The Hawkeye had a new name, the Stark Delicious.
Well, I mean, all right, it's quite a rebrand. I mean, I don't love it, but listen, an apple with the name including delicious is already going to make you want to eat it, right?
100%.
But again, I'm still going to say I'm still a fan of Hawkeye. I think that was the name they should have stuck with.
I agree. 1,000%. Hawkeye should have been. And well, the rebrand, John, as you know, worked because people definitely started to eat this apple. Okay. With the backing of Stark Brothers, their marketing machine. They even showcased it at the St. Louis World Fair in 1904. The delicious shot to fame, everyone. How cool is that? So I love that. Look at that wholesale, beautiful catalog. The story of an apple. It's like, on the dollar bills, it says legal tender of America.
Yeah.
That legal apple of America today. Okay. In 1914, though, John, after the Stark Brothers bought the rights to another apple, you've heard of this one, the Golden Delicious, one of my favorites. They renamed Jesse Hyatt's creation, the Red Delicious, to tell the two part. Okay. So there's the golden and the red. So by the 1940s, it was the best-selling apple in America. One journalist described it as having the broad shoulders and lipstick shine of a golden age Hollywood star. In today's world, you would think of Taylor Swift's Red album with her red lipsticks.
Yeah.
Or in the Gen X, you would think of Madonna. Okay. Yeah. And if you were going back a little bit further, you would think of Marilyn Monroe. And that's thanks to Stark's global reach, everyone. Millions of red delicious trees were planted all over the world. All of them descendants of that one stubborn seed in Iowa, John.
Yeah. Now that's all well and good.
Sure.
Sounds great. Sounds great. But where did it all go wrong? Because by the time we were growing up, again, red delicious apples were basically the fruit equivalent of cardboard. I mean, my wife, you can't stand it. My wife really can't stand that apple. She always tells me how much she hates that apple. So what happened? What happened to this apple?
Of course, you'd want to ask me. Yeah. Unfortunately, this is where our story takes the tragic turn, right? Where is our dun on our dun? We got to get that on our Roadcaster. I only have like little ones that are not duns. I got like a rim shot I could do, but I don't know if that would work as well. But let's talk about the growers, okay? Because now growers began selecting for looks. Okay. Everyone. Okay. In a while, right? A tree will send off a branch that will produce fruit that is just a bit different from the other fruit, John. So it's still genetically the same, but other attributes would come stronger, brighter, right? More reds, more uniform in shape, thicker, shift better on trains, like, right? So here's the crucial twist. The genes that made the apples redder and hardier were linked to the genes that gave them flavor. By chasing color, farmers were breeding the taste right out of the Red Delicious. So if we go back to the 1980s, Washington State was dominated by this one apple. At one point, more than half of the entire harvest, and consumers finally revolted. So by the late 1990s, right, 90s, sales had collapsed so badly that Washington's apple industry needed a government bailout, John. One farmer summed up to the New York Times, end quote, "For almost 50 years, we've been cramming down the consumer's throat a red apple with ever thicker skin, sometimes mushy, sometimes very good if done right, but a product that was bred for color and size, not for taste," end quote. So the Red Delicious went from the Cinderella story to cautionary tale, proof that beauty really can be only skin deep. And thanks to just real quick, thanks to our PA Jet. He said that if we press the trombone button, is that it? Is that? Can we use that for a dun dun dun?
No, that's not gonna work.
No, not yet. Okay, Jet, you tried. Epic failure, buddy, but we tried.
But yeah, okay. So now we know why Red Delicious became what it was. So it was once nice, but okay. Well, that's the Red Delicious in the rear view window. But let's look at an apple with a very different kind of origin story. Okay, I think we can do a palate cleanse here because while Red Delicious was born out of this marketing contest at the end of the day, the next apple in our lineup that we're going to talk about is the Bramley. And it begins with something of a far more humble story, and it's one with a little girl in Southwell near Nottingham, England. So let's set the scene. The year is 1809.
Okay.
And a young girl named Mary Ann Brailsford was bored. Just nothing much to do, just wandering around. So she decides to take a pip from the kitchen table where her mother was preparing some apples and plants it in a flower pot, as you do when you're a bored 19th century kid, I guess. And so basically, just again, a simple, small act of childhood curiosity. So, what happens to this pip? So, the pip sprouts, it grows into this lively little seedling. And before long, it was just too big for its clay pot. So, Marianne carries it down to the bottom of her garden, digs a hole, and gives it a proper home. And she could hardly have guessed what that small gesture would go on to mean for the history of apples.
I'm telling you, I'm like in my head, I'm thinking, which apple variety would I want on a daily basis? But beyond that, right? It's always about the bored children. You know, that's what I got out of that. It's like in my head, I'm like, how can I get a bored child not to be bored? Give him an apple.
Yeah, I
Okay.
guess so.
And it's always the bored child, isn't it? Great discoveries never seem to happen when someone is diligently doing their homework, right?
Yeah.
It always happens out of surprise.
That's why it's good to be bored, right? That's why we tell it. It's good to be bored every while.
It is good to be bored. You don't want to have the tablet in your face all the time. It's okay. You said it to your kids. Yeah. It's okay to be bored. Just be.
Of course.
Just be.
That's how you get good ideas like Marianne here. So let's see what happens here. So we left Marianne with her plant that's getting too big for the pot.
Yep.
But the story takes a twist. So just 4 years later, Marianne gets married. She moves out and leaves the tree behind. And after her parents died, the cottage was sold to a local butcher, a man named Matthew Bramley. And it was under his watch that this little tree quietly grew into something remarkable. Now, fast forward to the autumn of 1856, and a 17-year-old lad named Henry Merriweather. And all these pictures you're seeing, if you're watching live, obviously not the ages that I'm talking about them now. That doesn't look like a 19-year-old or 17-year-old guy. That's him later in his life. Anyway, so Henry Merriweather, he's a son of a nurseryman. He bumps into a man carrying a basket of particularly large, impressive apples. And curious, he asks, where did you get these apples? They look beautiful. And so the man just points him towards Mr. Bramley's garden.
Okay. And this is the moment of destiny, I guess I would say. Merriweather's equivalent of Newton's apple, only he's looking at it and thinking.
Yeah.
So that's not going to knock me on the head, John. That's going to make me a fortune.
I think so. I mean, he must have seen this and like, wow, this looks like it has potential. So Henry goes up to see Bramley's tree, and he's just astonished by the fruit. It's huge. It's handsome. It's unlike any apple he'd ever seen. And so he asked Bramley, what's the name of this apple? And Bramley is apparently in no mood for modesty. He declares, "It is my apple raised in my garden, and it's called Bramley seedling." Fair enough, right? So Henry wasn't put off by that. So he was brave enough to even ask for some grafts. And Bramley, to his credit, let him take them as much as he wanted. Now, I will say we don't really see much of that anymore, do we, Patrick? People that, you develop a new variety, what's the first thing they ask is, how much money can I get for it?
No, that's definitely not said.
And all these things. So back then, you had a variety that was new or something. A lot of times people just give them to you.
Yeah, it was like a present.
I think we should go back to those times. Anyway, that's a discussion for another time. So anyway, Henry has these grafts from Bramley's seedlings, and he sets about propagating the tree, convinced it was going to be the finest apple he will have ever encountered in his life. And so by the 1860s, Henry had enough saplings to begin selling them. And so he shows off his new variety at competitions, including the 1883 National Apple Congress in London. And while others brought, a whole wide range of varieties to impress the judges with, hit them at every angle, Henry staked everything on just this one apple, the Bramley.
Mm-hmm. And that's either bold marketing genius or utter lunacy, John.
Yeah, well, fortunately for him, it was genius because the judges were just completely taken aback by this apple. They loved the appearance, its wonderfully sharp flesh that cooked down into the most delicious puree, and crucially, its ability to be straight after picking while also keeping until June. So the
Okay.
Bramley ended up walking away with a first-class certificate in this competition, and the committee even predicted that, I guess in hindsight, with extraordinary foresight, that this was destined to become the greatest commercial apple in Britain. And they were right because today the British buy around 100 million fresh Bramleys a year, and another 250 million get used in pies, crumbles, cakes, sauces, whatever it is, you name it. As for the original tree itself, still standing in Southwell, and it's well over 2 centuries old now and fighting this losing battle with a fungal infection. And Nottingham Trent University are doing their best to keep its legacy alive by preserving its DNA and replanting grafts. But it seems, I read a few different things about it, but it seems like this old giant of a tree might be near the end of its life. But we'll see. They're trying.
I was going to say there's something quite poetic though about that, isn't there, John?
Yeah. I think it's pretty neat.
There's one tree planted, right, by a bored little girl, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
yeah,
I can tell you, becoming the ancestor of millions upon millions of Bramleys, like that's crazy.
It is. I mean, it really is. I mean, this is
Pretty
a
cool.
tree with a name and a legacy that just completely shaped British cooking.
Oh, 100%.
But, Patrick, not all famous apples are rooted in British soil like the Bramley, because the next apple, I believe that you're going to tell us about, is born halfway across the world, really. It's one that would come really to conquer supermarket shelves around the globe, especially today. And that, of course, I'm talking about is the Fuji. We all heard of the Fuji.
Yeah, you're so right. And that's where we're heading to Japan now, everyone. Okay.
Japan.
And what's fascinating is that the apples, right? If you look at these like Fuji apples, they weren't really even native to Japan in the form we think of them today. And we'll be discussing this in a bit more detail in a later episode in our series. But let's give a brief overview just right now, John. So the very first apple arrived in Japan from China during the Heian period around the year 918. They were tiny little things, really, often used as offerings at Buddhist temples. Not much to snack on, more of a symbolic fruit than anything else. Okay.
So basically more of a religious token than a packed lunch staple at this point.
100%. Exactly. And, but the big turning point came in 1871 when 75 apple varieties from the United States were imported into Japan. They were distributed all across the country, and it turned out that the colder northern regions, Aomori, Awati, Nagano, became the true apple heartlands. Rice was hard to grow there, but apples thrived. Over the years, Japanese growers began improving those American imports, making them bigger, sweeter, hardier. And then enter the Fuji apple. It comes from Aomori, where in 1939, John, researchers in the little town of Fujisaki took pollen from a Red Delicious and applied it to their local Rawls Janet flour. What was the result?
Okay.
Crisp, sweet, speckled red apple. And what do you think they called it?
Something delicious.
Agricultural forestry number 7.
Oh, that's real catchy. That rolls right off the tongue, doesn't it?
100%.
Give me an agricultural forestry number 7, please.
Hey, go ahead and pick me up 7 agriculture forestry number 7s today, okay? And yes, the kind of name that makes you think of rationing rather than orchards, okay? And in fact, rationing and war nearly destroyed it altogether, because by the 1940s were brutal on Japanese apple growers. Besides the obvious impacts of World War, There was an early frost in 1941, a typhoon in 1944, a catastrophic snowfall in 1945, and then just after the war, the government slapped new taxes on apple orchards. Prices collapsed in 1948, and it looked like good old number 7 apple would be lost in obscurity. But the growers of Amari were nothing if not persistent. By the 1950s, everyone, they'd stage a remarkable comeback. Apple harvests reached record highs, and marketers in Amari cleverly promoted the apples as a symbol of their region. Okay. So by 1956, they were producing nearly 30 million bushels. In 1960, they were declared Japan's oldest apple tree in natural monument, right? As if to underline the apple's importance of their identity already, right, John? Finally, in 62, number 7 was officially renamed by the National Apple Name Selection Council, and here comes the twist. They didn't even call it Fuji. After the Great Mountain, as most people assume, it was named after Fujisaki, the town where it was bred.
So really,
a little different, huh?
The world's most popular apple, and it is, right? I mean, it's at least one of them is named after a small town in Aomori, rather than Japan's most famous landmark. Which I know I could appreciate why people would think it was named after, again, the Mount Fuji. I mean, that's an iconic place.
That's right. The Fuji has gone pretty much on to becoming the best-selling apple in Japan and one of the most popular worldwide, loved primarily for its sweetness and crunch. Now, today, the Amari alone produces over 400,000 tons of apples every year, more than anywhere else in Japan. They've even built tourism around it. Apple picking tours, museums, orchards, monuments, all to the apple pioneers. In Nagano, they even feed apples to their Wagyu cows so they can literally eat apple-fed beef.
Oh, that's cool.
From temple offerings in the 10th century to typhoon-battered orchards in the 20th, to becoming a global supermarket staple, the Fuji apple's story really is one of the remarkable resilience. But the Fuji is also a reminder of something else, John. How apples by the 20th century have become really global. Okay. Yeah. America's Red Delicious and Rawls Janet helped give rise to the Japan's Fuji. But before Japan and its orchards became famous for the Fuji, John, America already had its own homegrown stars, the varieties that would dominate for a century. One of the earliest, those was the Baldwin.
That's right. The good old Baldwin apple. I personally haven't heard of this, but I assume many of our listeners haven't heard of this apple either. But it's really an apple that for much of the 19th century was celebrated in New England as the Macintosh would later become in the 20th. So that's what we're talking about here. But here's the thing. No one can quite agree on where exactly it came from. Its origins are tangled in these overlapping tales, each with their own local champion and embellishments like folklore grafted onto fact. So let's dissect some of these stories. So one story places the apple on the farm of John Ball in Wilmington, Massachusetts, sometime after 1740. And Ball's land, we're told, produced a chance seedling that bore remarkable fruit. And when the farm later passed into the hands of a man named Butters, he noticed that the tree attracted woodpeckers. Naturally, he dubbed the fruit the woodpecker apple, or simply pecker. So we're talking about a pecker apple here.
I love that. I'm sitting in the background going, now we're talking about peckers, everyone. Okay. And I was going to say, whoa. Just wait a second, John. So we're really talking about a farmer, right? Called Butters with an apple called peckers.
Yeah. And then a farmer before him called Balls.
Go on. No laughing yet.
You can't make this stuff up. This is not my story. These are stories from history.
These are not my story, but we're sticking to it.
We're dealing with farmers named Ball, Butters, and an apple named Pecker. Anyway, along comes a person more appropriately named Colonel Lomi Baldwin. And Lomi here was a revolutionary hero, an engineer, legislature, and something of a gentleman farmer. And actually, if that wasn't enough, Patrick, he was the second cousin of Johnny Chapman, better known to everybody listening as Johnny Appleseed. Now we'll talk about Appleseed. We'll talk about Johnny Appleseed in, I think it's the 4th part of our series. So stay tuned for more on Johnny. Anyhow, Baldwin here tasted this pecker apple, was duly impressed, and began propagating it across eastern Massachusetts. And from his hand, the apple spread. And with his name attached, it quickly became the Baldwin apple.
The Baldwin apple.
Yeah.
I think that's
a sensible name.
I mean, I guess. I mean, I don't know. It's I think it's very interesting to just be the Baldwin. I don't know. What would you think about the Baldwin apple today? Would you buy a Baldwin apple?
I'd buy it over a pecker apple.
Okay, you got me. You gave me that point, right? And unlike many other apples of its time, it wasn't just popular. It probably was useful, wasn't it, John?
Yeah, it was. I mean, definitely. I mean, look, I would say the name was definitely an improvement, but of course, that's this story with the pecker and all this stuff that we've been joking around with. That's only one of the versions of the tale. So another says that Baldwin
My gosh.
stumbled on the apple himself while out surveying the wilderness near Woburn, Massachusetts, and that
Okay.
it was he who noticed the woodpecker holes in the tree. And yet another story insists it was Samuel Thompson of Woburn who first discovered the tree, only for mischievous boys stealing apples to bring it to Baldwin's attention. And then finally, another story says in the 1830s, a man named Rufus Kittredge claimed the first tree had actually stood on his grandfather's farm near Tewksbury.
Oh, okay.
But Patrick, I mean, the beauty of these stories is that each one feels plausible. None of them seems completely crazy. Let's look at what we do know. So we know that Baldwin was interested in farming. We know he had a keen eye for practical improvements. And we know he was also well connected enough to popularize a promising apple. But looking at the exact sequence of events, that we can't determine. That's lost to time at this point. What isn't in dispute is what happens next, though, because by the early 1800s, Baldwin apples were being grafted by the hundreds and then the thousands. Entire orchards of towering Baldwin trees blanketed Massachusetts and spread out across New England. So in 1833, the New American Orchardist publication declared that no apple in the vicinity of Boston is so popular as this at the present day. And then by the 1850s, it was being exported as far as the East Indies, 1,500 barrels in one season alone. So the Baldwin became a staple of American agriculture at precisely the moment when farming was becoming more commercial and more scientific.
Yeah, and that's what we said, right? It was more of the many of the apples of the time. It was popular, it was useful, and again, right? And then you'll go on to talk more about it. I believe farmers loved it, didn't they, John?
Yeah, they did. They loved, and it was really for a slew of reasons too. There was not just one. I mean, as we kind of just alluded to, it kept well, it transported beautifully, and it produced on top of all that really large crops.
Yeah.
And so that's the farmer side of it. The consumer side of it, they loved it because it was versatile. So as a cider apple, it was superb with just the right balance of sweetness and acidity.
Okay.
As a pie apple, it was unmatched. The fruit's firm texture meant it held its shape in baking rather than collapsing into mush. We've all been there, right? With apple pies that kind of just go, just collapse in of itself.
True.
So this was a great apple for that. And so by the late 19th century, the New England Farmer publication was praising it as the apple equivalent of the Concord grape or the Bartlett pear, a standard bearer for quality. That's what this apple stood for. And Baldwin's fame didn't just endure in the orchards. So a monument to the original Baldwin tree, again, the tree doesn't stand there anymore, but there's a monument there where it did stand, is in Wilmington, Massachusetts, and it's inscribed with the dedication to that first fateful seedling.
That's
So
cool.
the tree itself, like I said, is no longer with us. It toppled in a gale in 1815. But by then, the apple had already conquered New England. Didn't matter. I mean, this tree was everywhere.
That's cool.
But I will also say its reign didn't last forever because, like I said at the very beginning, if listeners even know what this apple is, because I know I didn't know about the Baldwin before reading about it. So The early 20th century brought, as we know, a lot of challenges. Most disastrously, the bitterly cold winter of 1934, which wiped out Baldwin orchards across the Northeast. And so many farmers chose not to replant them. And you might be asking yourself, well, why wouldn't they replant these trees that were seemingly producing like the best apples, whether it be for cider, for cooking, for eating? Well, as it turns out, there were new varieties now available, like the Macintosh, which we've done an episode on,
Yep.
the Red Delicious, which you just talked about earlier.
Correct.
These apples proved even more resilient than the Baldwin.
Well, the Baldwin went from king of the orchard to king of noble relic.
Yeah, I mean that's a good way to put it. And so today it's no longer the eating apple of choice, but it does actually remain cherished in the cider making circles because its flavor, its texture, its history, they've
So
kept
true.
this apple alive, even if only in smaller numbers. So you're not going to find, large swathes of Baldwin apple trees in the Northeast. I know I personally haven't seen it, and I live up here, but they're around. And
Okay.
so to this day, the Baldwin has a place in American memory. So in 2013, I don't remember seeing this, which I'm old enough to see to have at least noticed it, but maybe you noticed this. But in 2013, the U.S. Postal Service honored a slew of apples, uh, and one of those was the Baldwin, and that was alongside the Northern Spy, again another apple I've never heard of, the Golden Delicious we know, and Granny Smith. So four apples that defined their eras. So I did you see these stamps? I've never seen these
I've
apple
never.
stamps. 2013, they did this. I'll have to ask some Apple people if they're aware
I
of
always
this.
ask when I get stamps if there's any like fruit or stamps like that.
Yeah.
I've
Well,
never, I've never, I've never seen, I've never, I've never seen this stamp before in my life,
you
John.
can buy them on eBay for stamp collector. I did see that. So if
Oh,
you
that's
wanna get
cool.
some, Apple stamps, there you go. But yeah, I mean, what makes the Baldwin story so compelling is just how perfectly it captures the intersection of myth, history, and agriculture, right? It's more than just a piece of fruit. Like a lot of the stories we tell about the
Yeah,
history of restaurant. It's
a lot
about,
of them are.
I mean, in this case with the Baldwin, it's about America's hunger for order and progress,
Yep.
about the way names and reputations shaped markets, and just about the fragility of even the mightiest apple when nature turns cruel. And we obviously see that a lot today with changing in climate and how just the carousel of varieties that keep coming in and out based on all these different factors. So that is uh, the story of the Baldwin and the
I like it.
story of all the things that we were going to talk about today. Again, we could probably do like an endless podcast series of just Apple names, just pure. I mean, to be honest, not every Apple name, for as cool as they sound, have cool backstories.
No, no,
Honestly,
no. Like
like
the jazz
Cos,
apple,
yeah,
we would think it's something different. It might be, you know what I mean? Like,
I think the Cosmic Crisp was also something like the crisp comes from Honeycrisp, and Cosmic was because it was out of this world. That's the story, folks. Okay, so unfortunately, not every apple has an exciting tale behind it, but these were some of the ones that kind of caught our attention, and so that's why we shared those.
I agree. I think it's fun. I mean, apples have so many different varieties. We could do an apple blind taste test and probably not guess any of them right. Right.
Well, that's the crazy thing. I think we touched on this in the first episode of our series. Is that before, was it back in the 1700s when America was just being settled? Something there was like, or maybe it was the 1800s, 17 or 1800s. There's 17,000 different varieties of apples, named varieties in the U.S. And I think today it's only down to 4,000. I mean, that's how many varietals have just gone by the wayside. Again, because of how our supply chain works now, we seek out and want to grow those apples that can be traded long distance and fit a certain spec to sit on the shelf and all these things. So
Yep. True.
kind of sad
True.
too at the same time because we're losing a lot of these interesting pieces of fruit that they'll have a different story, but also very different flavors and eating
Different
experience.
lifestyles of the whole deal.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
that's the apple. So again, this is hardly the conclusion of
No.
our Apple story. Listeners are going to hear part 3 come out next Tuesday. And then after that, we still have 2 more parts after that, parts 4 and 5. And hopefully you'll have all gained a further appreciation of the Apple and its journey through time here.
I agree.
Um, So that's all we really have for today. Of course, for those part of the History of Fresh Produce Club, we appreciate your support as always. If you are not a member of the History of Fresh Produce Club, do sign up. We'd love to have you. Those are our favorite people in the History of Fresh Produce world. Of course, we love all our listeners,
We love them
but
all.
they have a special place in our heart. And we also do appreciate Patrick was talking to me about this earlier today. If you do like what you hear, do give us a review on Apple or Spotify. It does help with our exposure to people who haven't heard what we've been talking about yet. Again, it could just be a one-word review if you prefer, just good or excellent, whatever you like. And of course, if you're going to be in Anaheim,
yep,
October, what are the dates? Like 18, 19,
really?
something like that.
16th, 17th, and 18th.
Those are the dates. Yes. So if you're in Anaheim, come find us if you can. It's like a Where's Waldo thing. Just find us. Feel free to say hello. We always love meeting the listeners that we can't see. You hear our voices and sometimes see our faces, but we do not hear your voices or see your faces. So it is nice to see that and hear that when we can. And do look out for that special episode that we'll try to be putting out the week of the show. So that's all we got for today.
Yes, and yes.
Excellent.
And everyone, I always say thanks for joining. Appreciate everyone just logging in and having a great time with us, as we love talking about fresh produce every day.
Obviously can't get enough of it. No matter how hard we try. Anyway, have a wonderful rest of your day. And until next time, it's goodbye for me, John Papp.
And goodbye for me, Patrick Kelly.